Hey everyone, welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. We are live with our video feed through theshannonjoy.com from the Christmas bunker. We have Courtney and Mike Panessa joining us today. They were here yesterday as well. I want to welcome all of you who are popping on. Welcome to the program. It's kind of funny. We have our bootleg production team here. And I would say you guys have been amazing. Courtney and Mike are here testing the sound, testing the lighting, responding to all of you. They have my son's headphones from his Xbox video. This is how we're all plugged in, and for whatever reason, I just find that so hilarious. But welcome to the program, guys. We have a big program today. It's going to be 1 hour, not longer, because I do have a meeting that I have to be to and I have to prepare for at 2 o'clock. So we are going to keep this to 1 hour today. I want to thank all of you who joined me yesterday. You guys are amazing. The support that we're getting from our listeners is unbelievable. So thank you, all of my subscribers, all of those angel investors, those of you who have donated on theshannonjoy.com. You guys are keeping us going, and let me tell you, we're healthy right now. There are so many opportunities for this radio program, for this audience, and I am absolutely confident that we're going to find a home very soon. Really quickly before we start, we're going to hit politics hard today. So I'm going to devote most of the video program, the video podcast, to criminal justice reform. I had a long conversation with Daniel Horowitz yesterday, and this is a fast-moving train. We are going to be looking at, in the last week of December, we are going to be looking at a major budget bill. We're going to be looking at major criminal justice reform bills and also a potential amnesty that is being led by the new conservative sweetheart, Lindsey Graham. And so all of this is happening. It's all been moved back. They were supposed to begin the budget battles this week, but apparently when there's a funeral in Washington, D.C., no one can work. So I assume because of the untimely passing of George H.W. Bush, everyone on Capitol Hill is just so distraught and so overcome with grief that no one can legislate for 2 weeks. And so conveniently, the lawmakers in Capitol Hill have pushed off the budget battle now until conveniently December 21st. That's right, 4 days before Christmas, when the entire population of the United States of America is not paying attention to what is happening on Capitol Hill. And that is the convenient maneuver now that has been taken by our leaders in the Republican Party, both in the Senate, the House, and also, unfortunately, the presidency. This is an opportunity for Donald Trump to use the bully pulpit to get cuts in the budget, in spending, to get funding for his border wall, to defund Planned Parenthood, to defund so many of the agencies that are thwarting his administration. But sadly, again, we are seeing a punt from the Republican Party. So we're going to look at what is on the horizon for the next couple weeks, and I'm going to keep you all appraised to everything that is happening. While everyone else in the conservative media world is focusing on squirrels and non-issues and stories that will never affect your life, here at the Shannon Joy Show, we're going to be giving you the real deal about the legislation that is moving forward, that means something to you, that affects your wallet, it affects your business, it affects your health care, the health of your children, it affects your education. All of these things are what truly matters to the American people. Unfortunately, there is a lack of substantive coverage on these issues in both the left and right-wing media outlets today. So we're going to address that as much as we can here. But before we get to criminal justice reform and what is happening in Washington, D.C., I just have to say thank you to so many of you who have, I mentioned earlier when we introduced the show, you guys have supported this program in such a humbling way over the past couple weeks, and have allowed us a little bit of breathing room so that we can shop for a new radio home. And so I just want to say thank you to those of you. Shirley, who is a new subscriber, thank you so much. Gordon, thank you so much for your new annual subscription. Chuck Tiza, thank you so much for your generous contribution. You guys, the subscriptions and the contributions are the lifeblood of this radio show right now as we begin to put the pieces back together, find a new home for the radio show locally, but also potentially nationally. And I'll give you guys a little bit of insight onto what's going on with the Blaze and CRTV and what I'm trying to do to get this show broadcast over their network. But also Stephen, Michael, Eddie, Timothy, Diane. I know this is not the most interesting radio, but I'm so thankful, and you guys need to be named. These are angels and investors that have subscribed or donated in the past couple days. Ronald, Ann, Nathan, Becky, thank you so much. Marlene, Molly, who is also the angel who gifted me the tickets for the Glenn Beck event. Molly, thank you so much for your generosity. I just can never thank you for the doors that you have opened up for not only myself, but this program as well. Terry, thank you so much. Susan, Darren, Dale, Jennifer, Rob, Samuel, Joseph, Brian, Palmer, Susan, Gary, Nicholas, Lindsay, Michelle, Bill, Deborah, and who else do we have? Donna and David. I want to thank all of you by name. I know a lot of you are watching right now and you are rooting for this program, and I would be remiss to not thank you and make sure that you understand how important your donation is. If anyone would like to contribute to the Shannon Joy Show, you can feel free to donate. There's a button at the top at theshannonjoy.com. And also subscribe, $2.99 a month for the podcasts, on-demand listening, commercial-free. And this is for a couple dollars a month, the price of a cup of coffee. You can listen at your leisure anytime. The YouTube videos we're going to be keeping up for a little while in the first week as we begin to build up our YouTube audience. But in the next week or so, we're going to begin to take those live feeds down, because the reason people subscribe to the website is to have that premium content. So to get the on-demand viewing, which is also commercial free. And so we have to make sure that there is a value built in for those of you who decide to subscribe to the podcast. And so if we put them out for free on YouTube, that wouldn't make any sense. So we'll be doing the live broadcast from YouTube. It's going to be blasted out to my website, also Facebook and Twitter for the foreseeable future, but that's going to come down right after the live broadcast. So I just want to make sure that you guys are all ready for that and that you're anticipating that as we move forward. So let's move on. Welcome to those of you who are new. Courtney, how are we looking on YouTube? Are there any problems? How does the sound, Mike Panessa?
Everyone says good sound now.
Okay.
Now the echo is gone.
Good. All right, so we worked on the sound.
Good.
All right. This Yeti microphone yesterday was a prop because I couldn't figure out how to use it. And today it actually works. So I was up late last night messing with it. It's actually a very useful tool, and it was really easy to set up. And so we were messing with the sound a little bit earlier. Do we have any questions or any comments on the last show? We're looking good?
Yep, we're looking good.
Mike, occasionally I am going into the red on this, so I just wanted to let you know I'm watching my levels. I think it's called the levels. I don't really. We're all learning here, people. Oh, Mike, you have a little peanut butter on that headphone that you stole from my son, by the way. I get such a kick out of the fact that, I mean, do you have any headphones, Shannon? Yeah, let me go check the Xbox console. So the Courtney and Mike are both using Jack's headphones from his Xbox. So let's move on to the content of the program. I think we're going to start with the squirrel report. For those of you who are new to this program, I talk about squirrels. We coined the term squirrel on the program, and it's basically a shiny object that distracts the American public from policy that affects their lives. So the things in Washington, D.C. that actually matter to you and matter to your life and the life of your children or your grandchildren are always the things that are never covered in mainstream news media, including the left-wing media and also right-wing media. So if you've heard about Pocahontas and Elizabeth Warren, if you have focused incessantly on NFL Kneelinggate, any of the major scandals and investigations and hearings coming out of Washington, D.C., I learned this the hard way. One of the first stories that I covered when I launched my program 5 years ago was the Benghazi story. And I devoted an enormous amount of time and energy to understand everything that happened in that situation. I consumed as much information as I possibly could, and I reported it on the program. We followed the hearings. We followed everything that happened in terms of that Benghazi scandal. And we were cheering Trey Gowdy. He was my boyfriend for a while. In the first years of my radio program, because man, he made you feel good, right? He really knew how to give it to those liberal losers on Capitol Hill, right? And everyone would get riled up when Trey Gowdy would just take down Susan Rice or anyone that he was investigating. And that went on for a while. It went on for 3 months, and then 6 months, and then a year, and then a year and a half. And as I continued to watch the story, there were certain pivot points. There were certain moments in that investigation, and that there were opportunities for Trey Gowdy and the Republicans to begin indictments and to move it forward from an investigation to criminal prosecution. And in every scenario, they punted, right? So they put on a great show, and this is heartbreaking, because in terms of Benghazi, there are 4 Americans who perished. It was a huge black mark on the American people, but also our State Department and our foreign, our government. And so this is something that had, people were very passionate about. And the idea that they would really use it as a distraction, right? And as I begin to observe, first learning from Benghazi and realizing that they wasted so much of our time focused on something that they never intended to prosecute. They never intended to pull down indictments. And I looked out and I thought about, Fast and Furious and the IRS scandal and Benghazi and so many issues that we focused so incessantly upon that never ever came to conclusion or resolution. Justice was never served. Even now in the trifecta of power, a Republican president, a Republican Senate, and a Republican House of Representatives, a president who campaigned on bringing justice. If you remember the throngs of crowds in those campaign rallies that Donald Trump went to, lock her up. And Donald Trump promised people that he would lock her up. And what do we see happen the second they get into positions of power? They walk it back. So the rhetoric is intense. The show is intense. But the discernible policy outcome never happens. Justice is never served. And so that's the nature of a squirrel, right? Mm-hmm. Elizabeth Warren's DNA is never going to matter to you in your life. Yet there will be columns and columns. It really doesn't matter what percentage of Elizabeth Warren's DNA has Native American. None of this will ever matter to you. It will never affect your life. Whether or not Colin Kaepernick kneels at an NFL game doesn't matter. Yet this is what those in news and information media feed us on a daily basis. They feed us a steady diet of sugar and unhealthy, elements. Yet when we actually need steak, we need nourishment, we need information about what is actually happening. And so, Mike, did you have a comment, or you were pointing to Courtney?
Yeah, don't look at me.
Oh, don't. Okay, so we got a comment yesterday from a listener. Very good, wonderful feedback that I keep looking at Mike Panessa, and it's distracting to all of you. Courtney's right in front of me, so that's not, it's distracting because I'm like a bobblehead doll moving back and forth, and it's...
Merch idea.
We're learning. I told you, every single day the show is going to get better. I think the sound is better today, and so we're going to learn every day, and I promise you it's going to get better and better. So the Squirrel Report is my attempt to educate the audience about the things you should ignore. Right? That's the purpose of it, because there is such an enormous volume of information that is foisted upon us as American citizens. thousands and thousands of pages of legislation, hundreds of stories that we're trying to follow, trying to get a handle on what the heck this government is doing to us. And it's really important that we never waste brain cells on stories that don't matter. And so we try to focus, and this is part of being an editor and deciding what to talk about, what are the important topics. I try to focus your attention and focus my own attention on the things that are going to matter the most in your life, and also giving you the truth about what's actually happening. So we typically do the squirrel report once or twice a week, depending on how many squirrels are out there. If there's really nasty, gnarly, horrible legislation right on the docket, that's when you know there are going to be a million squirrels, especially the second you see Pocahontas come out. The second you see stories on, Rush or Hannity or Dana Lash or any of the big talkers, when they start talking about Pocahontas or NFL, that's when you know something really bad is happening legislatively in Washington, D.C. And so the squirrels this week, I'm going to give you the top two. The number one squirrel is anything and everything that has to do with Dick's Sporting Goods and whether or not they've decided to sell guns or not. So yesterday it was all over talk radio and all over right-wing media that Dick's Sporting Goods store, which is actually, they were built out of Rochester, New York. They're local here to our region. They made the decision. They're moving lefty, proggy, that's short for progressive. So proggy, lefty, Dick's Sporting Goods thinks that they're going to win in the hearts and minds of American people by never selling another gun or ammunition from the store. And so this has backfired. They've had lower retail sales. And so this has been the obsession now of the entirety of the right-wing media. And look at Dick's, they're getting it. Look at them, they're losing because they're not going to sell guns anymore. And they're going on and on. Not to mention that retail sales are, they were okay on Black Friday, but retail stocks are very soft. Retail's having a really tough time right now. And so I would say that probably contributed more to the soft numbers at Dick's Sporting Goods. But the thing that is interesting to me, and the reason when you can really see the squirrel, is that those big talkers who will obsess over a non-issue regarding Dick's Sporting Goods in northern, the northern region of the United States, they'll spend an enormous time talking about Dick's Sporting Goods, but they'll never tell you about the Fix NICS legislation that was passed a year ago, which was the largest gun control legislation to ever pass since George W. Bush. That's right. Donald Trump, the Republicans in the House and the Senate have pushed forth more gun control legislation and passed more gun control legislations in the past 24 months than in the entire administration of Barack Obama. You can take that to the bank. It's really in three forms. First, the Fix NICS legislation, which sets up an unconstitutional database that links state databases across the country, gathering any and all information about Americans regarding their finances, their mental state, and essentially building these databases to determine whether or not people should be allowed the privilege of owning a gun. This NICS system, this is the database that was set up, was the system that resulted in elderly vets being subjected to seizures of their firearms because they sought financial help. So a Vietnam vet who's maybe in his mid-60s would, go and seek out financial assistance because he needs help managing his finances as he's moving into retirement. And for whatever reason, that flagged a check mark on the NICS system, and you had the unfortunate situation of, thousands of Americans risking loss of their firearms because of that data system. The legislation did not fix NICS, it expanded NICS. And this is why Dana Lash and I got into a Twitter battle over this, because the NRA supported Fix NICS, and some of the NRA spokespeople supported Fix NICS, and we showed them in the legislation, in the body of the legislation, this allows local officials to seize guns from people who are accused of domestic violence. And that was in the legislation of the bill. That bill passed without any scrutiny because of all the other squirrels. In addition, while they focus on Dick's Sporting Goods and how they're getting it, and it's victory for the Republican rights and for gun owners. They ignore the fact that bump stock bans are on the docket for President Trump. He's indicated that he's going to sign legislation banning bump stocks. He already put through an executive order, but apparently they're going to expand that as well. In addition, we have an onslaught of red flag laws that are sweeping the country in states across the U.S., from Florida to New York State to Texas. We have legislation in virtually every state to begin to put together red flag laws. These red flag laws, which we've detailed on the program, essentially allow seizure of firearms without due process. So a doctor, a teacher, a government bureaucrat can enter a person's name into a system and that they could have their guns seized without being convicted of anything. And so the red flag laws are different across the state, but the president has come out in support of red flag laws, specifically in a statement about 6 months ago, or actually, yeah, I think it was the spring of last year, when he supported the gun control legislation after the shooting in Florida. And he said, and I quote, we'll worry about, well, I'll paraphrase, we'll worry about due process later. We got to get the guns out of the hands of these people. We'll worry about due process later. See, these are the big things that matter to all of you. But again, the big talkers on the conservative right in the mainstream media won't focus on this. They will train your eyes on the squirrels. The second squirrel of the week is anything and everything that has to do with the passing of George H.W. Bush. So he is a man with quite a legacy. He has accomplished amazing things in his lifetime. I'm sure he was a wonderful father, a great husband, and accomplished much in his lifetime. I oppose virtually everything he ever did as a politician, but you have a man here who puts his pants on one leg at a time, and he's passed away. And, you know, but the amount of coverage and the amount of broadcast time that is going to be devoted to his passing is absolutely a squirrel. So you don't have to worry about any of the tiffs, any of the fights happening between the right and the left regarding George W. Bush. And apparently this is a very convenient passing, like I mentioned earlier. Apparently legislators on Capitol Hill cannot grieve and legislate at the same time. And they are so distraught. They are just, racked with grief, I would assume, because, they now have announced they're going to push off any major legislation, any budget battles to December 21st, aka 3 days before Christmas, aka no one's paying attention to what they're doing. Right. Yeah. And so they want you to be distracted because they have a lot of really nasty things prepared for the American people that will pass in the waning days of Christmas 2018. And we have been preparing you as an audience for this. I think I told you 6 months ago that get ready for a couple days before Christmas. We are looking the three major bills that are on my radar. Major criminal justice reform, which we're going to get into in the second half hour of this program. I'm going to give you everything you need to know about what's going on with criminal justice reform. Also, a massive amnesty that Lindsey Graham has been working on behind the scenes. This is massive amnesty for millions of illegals and their family members, with the promise from what I've been told of funding for a border wall, which I guarantee will be stripped out at the last minute. We'll probably get amnesty without a border wall, and we're off to the races for 2019. In addition, we have a major budget. Again, debt and deficit as far as the eye can see. And what many of you care about and no one is reporting, again, you're not going to hear this on Hannity, you won't hear this on Fox News. Unfortunately, you won't even hear this news from some of the major pro-life organizations across the U.S. They aren't going to bring this to their donors, their supporters, or their constituency groups, but this was from Politico yesterday. Hill Republicans appear to have abandoned their effort to defund Planned Parenthood, at least for now. So it's over, guys. 2 years, $1.5 billion, and it looks like this new budget legislation will again continue to fund the abortion industry via Planned Parenthood in the U.S. for the foreseeable future. This became apparent, and I'm reading from Politico right now. It became apparent just how much steam that effort had lost when Senator Ted Cruz tried briefly and failed to rally support for one last attempt to push through the Planned Parenthood cuts, Obamacare repeal, and other conservative priorities. But most Republicans, already rattled by the possibility of a shutdown, razzle-dazzle, right? Everyone's going to talk about the shutdown. That means we're gonna get a nasty round of legislation. Republicans are already rattled by the possibility of shutdown this month, triggered by Donald Trump's border wall demands, which, by the way, he'll probably never get. The way it'll say, we'll give you $25 million for the border wall, but you get it in 2025 or something like. I mean, that's the way they operate. They dismissed his bid. House Republicans now say these are supposedly conservatives who rake in hundreds of thousands of dollars from donations from major pro-life organizations like March for Life, National Right to Life, and the Susan B. Anthony list. Republicans say there's no point in using their remaining days in power to pass a bill that's sure to die in the upper chamber. Well, the way that you make it so that a bill doesn't die in the upper chamber is you use the bully pulpit, you use the power of your constituency, you wake up the base, and you let them know what's going on. That's when people start making phone calls. That's when people start getting on the horn, and they send emails, and they call their some of these political action groups and say, what the heck are you doing? Why are we donating money to you when you're not even lobbying? You're bad at your job. This is what I said to National Right to Life when the minibus bill passed. They gave all kinds of excuses for not reporting on it and not calling out Republicans and Donald Trump, and talked about all of the things that they're going to do in the future to protect babies. And at this point, you have to say to them, you're really bad at your job. You would be better off going back to your hometown, opening up a crisis pregnancy center in your town. You'll probably save more babies that way than you will lobbying on Capitol Hill, because clearly your lobbying efforts are not working. There are a couple conservative groups, I mentioned them yesterday, lifenews.com, also the Christian News Network, CNS, they have reported on this. And here we have a conservative group that's actually speaking out in this Politico piece. According to Kristen Hawkins, she's the president of the anti-abortion group Students for Life in America, they had 2 years to defund Planned Parenthood, and they failed. That should be the headline on LifeSite News. That should be the headline from Lila Rose. That should be the headline from Live Action. That should be the memo going out to all major donors for March for Life, Right to Life, and Susan B. Anthony list. The headline is they had 2 years to defund Planned Parenthood, and they failed. It's a huge frustration, according to Kristen Hawkins. We worked so hard to elect these supposedly pro-life Republican officials, and we expect results. Kudos to Kristen Hawkins and Students for Life of America. They are one of the few outlets that are brave enough to tell the people the truth about what Republicans and this president are doing in terms of funding abortion and Planned Parenthood in the United States. So those are your squirrels. Again, anything that has to do with Dick's Sporting Goods, anything that has to do with the passing of George H.W. Bush. But now we're going to move on to the news of the day. In case unless you guys have questions, I'm just going to take a little sip. I'm a little dry.
I believe our good friend, the Zippy Crew.
Zippy Crew.
Yes, would like to know, excuse me, do you know if the AFA caved as well?
What is the American Family? I'm assuming, I have no idea. What is the AFA?
Let's see.
Ask him to clarify. And actually, the answer is I don't know. Because I don't know who the AFA. I'd have to look into it. I have been incredibly vigilant over the past 2 years, and I've been watching pro-life groups like a hawk. And there have been multiple times when they had the opportunity to mobilize their base, to mobilize their the very large voice that they have, but they have chosen to obscure the truth from their constituents. And this is precisely why I talk to conservative Christians and they believe that Planned Parenthood has been defunded. There's been, in my estimation, a purposeful disinformation campaign perpetuated by big talkers, but also, Steve Deace yesterday on his program on The Blaze and CRTV called it a protection racket, and I think he's absolutely right. He identified these major pro-life organizations as a protection racket. They make an enormous amount of money, and I hate to be the one to bring that to you guys, but it is the truth. And you come here and you visit with me every day because you want the truth. And those of you who are in my audience are wicked smart, you're brilliant, and you're not afraid. You're not afraid to hear the truth. And you know that this country cannot move forward. We can't go about the business of defeating the Democrats. We can't go about the business of protecting our Constitution and our Bill of Rights and our civil liberties, protecting our borders and protecting our culture. We can't do any of that if we don't accept the truth about the charlatans and the connivers and the liars among us in the Republican Party, and also in a large portion of the so-called conservative movement. It's like an addict, right? So if you're addicted to drugs or alcohol, or you struggle with obesity or any type of affliction, a lot of people will go through years and years of denial, right? Of not addressing the elephant in the room, what is the truth of a situation. And anyone will tell you, you cannot fix anything until you first admit there's a problem. And this is one of the things that is just glaring to me in today's conservative political culture, is there is absolutely no admission or acceptance of this massive elephant in the room, right? The fact that we have a president and two houses of Congress, two bodies of Congress that are controlled by Republicans, and a massive multi-million-dollar, if not billion-dollar, conservative movement that is raking in the cash across the country. And the idea that we have a conservative media, a conservative movement, and all levers of power in Washington, D.C., and all we get are Obama bills and Obama legislation for 2.5 years. This needs to be a wake-up call to everyone who cares about the country, everyone who has trusted the big talkers over decades. And believe me, I was a Rush baby. It killed me. It's killed me to hear him say things like, well, the American people, they really like socialized health care. So let's just take that off the table. Well, the American people, they really, they just really like the welfare state. Well, I don't think the debt and the deficit really matter that much to the American people. So why should it matter to Donald Trump? These are the things that Rush Limbaugh has said over the past couple years. In addition to lying to his audience, blatantly lying to his audience and telling them that Donald Trump suspended the insurance subsidies to the insurance cartel, which is really the
fines are going away. That's the only thing I know that happened different.
Well, and the fines might not go away. You see, they built the legislation or the executive memorandum so that the fines wouldn't go away until, I believe, 2019. And so next year, so a lot of people this year think they don't have to pay the Obamacare penalties, but that doesn't, at least from the accountants that I've talked to, that doesn't set in until 2019. And I guarantee all of you, you will see, I can foresee a piece of legislation that in some way they'll call it a freedom payment or red, white, and blue payment, something that's really conservative and patriotic and nationalistic. And everyone will be like, yeah, right. And all of a sudden conservatives turn into Democrats. That's the story of 2017 and 18 is the morphing of conservative Republicans into liberal Democrats before our very eyes. It's a crazy thing to witness. But it's 12:34, so I need to move on with the program really quick. I want to just thank my sponsors. I have a lot of advertisers who right now don't have a home. As we move this program hopefully to a new flagship station here locally in Rochester, New York, I want to say thank you I knew I was going to forget someone yesterday, and I did. My good friend Paul over at the Livingston County Pizza Company. Paul, thank you so much for your support. My advertisers have agreed. I've spoken to all of them. They have agreed to hold on to their budgets for 2019. So they're giving me the needed time to move this radio program from my living room or my dining room, hopefully to a studio in the next 3 to 4 weeks. And that is just such a huge an amazing gesture from my advertiser. So I want to thank Dr. Liz and Trish over at Hellendale Dermatology. If any of you guys are local here, this is your cue to go and patronize these businesses, right? Give them a phone call. Let them know how thankful you are for sticking with me in the program. It's been a tumultuous time, and they're just amazing. But Dr. Liz and Trish over at Hellendale Dermatology, Mitch and Richie and Ann and Rhonda over at the Ide family of dealerships. If you need a Honda or a Mazda, go and see them here locally, and make sure you grab the owner, grab Richie, and tell him you are buying this car from the Ides because of their commitment to supporting this program. Jeff Schofield, my good friend, he's the biggest realtor in Rochester, and he has been an amazing support not only to this program but also to me as a friend. The Charles Finney School, this is where my son Jackson goes to school. It is a wonderful Christian school here in Rochester, and they have been so wonderful. And with the prayers and the amount of support that they have given me, it's just been overwhelming. So the Charles Finney School, Don Polano, one of my closest friends and the owner of PCM and Associates, he is national. He has clients all over the country, and he is my financial planner. I would trust him with my life. This is the type of person that Don Polano is. He's one of the best people I have ever known. He is such a good friend. And if you are looking for help with your IRA, your Roth IRA, savings for college funds, 401ks, anything and everything, he can help you with that. Joe Marshall, who is my very first advertiser on theshannonjoy.com. He wrote a book called Last Call for Liberty, and it's a wonderful book about the Constitution and liberty. And I recommend all of you click on that link and purchase the book. Diane Miller of Advantage Federal Credit Union, again, a wonderful friend, also the Goddard School. So I just wanted to take a moment at the bottom of the hour to thank everyone. Right now, I'm just giving them live reads pro bono because we don't have anywhere to put their ads right now. So we're working on that, but please guys, help me to support the advertisers that allow this program to continue. And again, right now we don't have a net, and all of your donations are just so incredibly appreciated. For those of you who have donated, if you want to help keep this program going in this precarious time, I would encourage you guys to pop on to theshannonjoy.com, hit the donate button, and if you feel moved and you feel like it's something that that you're open to doing, give in any amount. So $1, $2, it really, every bit really helps, and we appreciate. Even better than a donation is a subscription. So for those of you who would like access to the commercial-free on-demand podcasts every day so that you can listen if you're not here at 12 noon every day or you have a busy life, you can listen at your leisure anytime during the day, and that is the benefit of the subscription. It's $2.99 a month or $24.99 a year. You can also gift it. So anyone who wants to help me push this radio program out to your friends and family, this would be a wonderful Christmas gift. You can gift the Shannon Joy Show to your favorite politico, someone who is interested in the politics of the day, and I want to encourage all of you guys to do that. Okay, so that is the bottom of the hour sponsorship mention thing. I want to get into criminal justice reform, which we're going to carry over in tomorrow's program as well, because it's a big story. No one is reporting on it. The definitive source on criminal justice reform is Daniel Horowitz over at Conservative Review. So he has written probably 24 pieces over the past year on criminal justice reform, and anything that you want, if you really want the meat and potatoes of this issue and you want to look at the text of the bill and the details of the bills, the various bills that have come out, I want to encourage you guys to go to Conservative Review. Also listen to Daniel's podcasts 2 or 3 times a week, and I'll tell you what, you can skip 3 hours of Rush Limbaugh or 15 hours of the big talkers a week. listen to 2 hours of Daniel Horowitz's program, and you're going to get more information in that 2 hours than you will in all of the hours that you consume on radio. Also, Steve Deace is one of my favorites. Steve Noble, Michael Pelka, Joe Walsh. So those are some of the radio broadcasters in my hemisphere that are continuing to tell the truth. So let's walk through. Do we have any questions, any comments, anything I need to know about, Courtney?
I wanted to know your thoughts on like what is going on with Ted Cruz and Mike Lee. Like, how are they navigating through all this? And because I know Ted Cruz went on a bill that was not very conservative lately, and that's what they were talking about.
So Ted Cruz signed the massive minibus budget bill. This was the Health and Human Services / Labor / something else. I think there was defense tied in there. And this was the bill that funded Obamacare, funded Planned Parenthood, funded amnesty. It funded all sorts of refugee resettlement. I mean, this bill essentially codified virtually the entirety of the Obama administration, the initiatives that were put forth during the Obama administration, funded by the Republicans. Now, it was different in this past summer because previously Ted Cruz had voted against these bills. There have been about 5 or 6 budget bills that have passed, continuing resolutions. Every bill for the past 2 years has funded the entirety of the Obama agenda in the Obama administration. There really hasn't been anything that they've taken out. The difference is you're beginning to see conservative opposition to these type of bills begin to wane. You're seeing that in the Freedom Caucus and folks like Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan. They're quieter. They were, in fact, very quiet about the passage of the minibus bill. But also, this bill, Mike Lee voted against it. Ted Cruz voted for it. It was because he was up for re-election in Texas. If you remember, a few months ago, he had a major re-election campaign. It was very close. Mitch McConnell and the Senate Republican Committee, or the Senate Republican Fund, it's the major financial apparatus of the Senate and Mitch McConnell, so the leadership in the Senate. And they poured a bunch of money into Ted Cruz's campaign coffers so that he could challenge Beto O'Rourke. In addition, Donald Trump came down and campaigned for Ted Cruz in Texas. So I think that was the nature of the negotiation. I don't like that Ted Cruz voted for that bill. That is another heartbreak that I think a lot of us have experienced. But I tend to, there are a lot of good things that Ted Cruz has done in the past couple years since the emergence of Donald Trump, and everyone has lost their mind in the U.S.
Right.
We haven't heard from him, and so he's been very quiet. Since he has been reelected, I think we're going to hear a lot more from Ted Cruz. I think we might begin to see the lion, but I will not. I think we're going to see him come back. I am so thrilled that Ted Cruz is holding the line on this criminal justice reform bill, along with Senator Tom Cotton, in opposition to Senator Mike Lee. Yes. So this is where
flips.
Yeah. What I tend to do, a lot of times we waste a lot of time in conservative media obsessing over why people do things, right? We try to figure out why would Mike Lee actively push a piece of legislation that would potentially, not even potentially, that would release 4,000 violent felons into the American public, people who were convicted of horrendous things. Why on earth would Mike Lee support that? And we turn ourselves around inside trying to figure out why they would do it. A few years ago, I decided not to do that ever again as an analyst. I don't really care why they do it. I don't care why Donald Trump is betraying his base. I don't care why Ted Cruz voted for a terrible bill. I care more about what they do. And I learned that from the Gospels of Jesus Christ. So there's a parable in the New Testament, and the people are asking Jesus, they want to know, here you are doing all these miracles. You are clearly the Son of God, you are clearly divine. Why don't people accept your message? Why won't people accept your message? And they wanted a single pat answer, right? Well, because of this, because that's what we want. We want answers. We want the whole story laid out for us in a very clear way. We want to know why. But Jesus did not give them a clear pat answer. He said, well, there are a lot of reasons. And then he went into the parable of the sower, and he said, imagine me, and I'm like a sower of seeds, right? A guy who throws the seeds and tries to plant, whatever produce, maybe it's lettuce or I don't know, but, he scatters seeds all over, right? And some of them, fall on shallow ground, and they are able to take root and they sprout up real quickly. But because they're not deep enough into the soil, they wither and die in the hot sun. Some are scattered onto stony paths, and they never even have a chance to take root, right? Some are, and he gives these different reasons for why people don't hear the message. He said only a few are scattered onto fertile ground, and they have nice deep roots, and they can grow out. And but the answer is, why do politicians betray us in Washington, D.C.? They have a million reasons. You could have a politician who goes to Washington, D.C., who has led an upright life, who has for 40 years told the truth, always done the right thing, and waged honorable campaigns. And he goes to Washington, D.C., something happens, his wife leaves him, things start to fall apart, the stress sets in, he begins to drink, or maybe he takes, maybe he begins to make decisions that he never made before, and then that gets him in trouble, and then all of a sudden, he's riled up in something, and he makes decisions because of decisions or choices that he's made since he's come to Washington. Maybe he's just a scoundrel. Maybe some of them are just good liars, and they know how the game is played, and they're going to tell you whatever you want to hear and have no problem stabbing you in the back. Some of them go in and they work so hard, and they just get beat down. They just get battered, and they do everything they can. And this is the place that I would put Ted Cruz, as someone who waged a righteous battle. Someone who led an upright life, and he went in, he laid everything on the table.
Yep.
And no one stood by him.
Nope.
No one stood by him. And they allowed him to be crushed by a liberal Democrat from New York City.
Yep.
And so if I were to guess about Ted Cruz, I would guess that he's still reeling from that. And so he decided, you know what, I did everything. I'm going to lay low.
Yep.
I wish he didn't. I wish he said, you know what? I'm going to fight till the end. And I'm going to continue to do exactly what I did. And if that means I lose my Senate seat, then I lose my Senate seat. And when I go to heaven, the Lord will say, well done, my good and faithful servant, right? Because we build our treasures up in heaven, not here on earth. I wish he would have done that. He can still do that. And that's the thing. A lot of times in politics, we write people off forever because of something they said at one point about a certain piece of legislation. And let me tell you, I have been angry at so many pundits, politicians, media figures, and I name names. Y'all know I name names, right? I criticize Donald Trump more than anyone in conservative media. But you know what? I don't pull punches on Rand Paul. I don't pull punches on Ted Cruz. And you guys all know that. When they signed that legislation, we held them accountable. I wish I could go after Democrats. But unfortunately, we have to go after the Republicans who are acting like Democrats first before we can even get to the Democrats, right? You've got to get through that. You've got to get through that wall first before you can even address Ocasio, Estacio, Hernitis, whatever. I don't even know how to say.
At least they're not Democrats. It's not an argument.
Yeah,
right.
We all know they are.
Because they're Democrats.
Right.
At least they legislate like Democrats.
Yeah,
right? Because what we look at discernible policy outcome. And so anyone can always be redeemed. That's my point here. Right? If Ted Cruz, if the lion comes back in the next couple weeks, the next couple years, then go for it. You do you, I'm going to do me, but I'm going to tell the people the truth about what you're doing when you do you. So, I mean, that's the way it's going to be. So I went a little bit longer there. We have about 12 minutes left in the broadcast. I think that's enough to set us up with criminal justice reform. We're going to start with just what it is. This is what's happening in the Senate right now is a continuation of what was passed in the House of Representatives this summer. It's called the First Step Act. This is part of a massive criminal justice reform agenda in the United States that started not this year, not last year, not 3 years ago or 4 years ago or even 5 years ago, but almost a decade ago. This is one of the things that we all have to understand about the unibrow and progressives, right? The unibrow, it is the progressive coming together of both Republicans and Democrats. These people have power in Washington, D.C., but they're also connected to massive, massive corporations, NGOs, think tanks, billionaires, global billionaires like George Soros. And so these plans are set in place, not willy-nilly. This just didn't come out of the blue. Mike Lee didn't wake up yesterday and say, hey, I think I'd like to release 4,000 violent criminal felons because, I just feel like it. That does not happen. And so this bill would drastically change federal criminal sentencing. This is for felons in the United States. And essentially, there's a wealth of reporting from Daniel Horowitz. I'm going to get to a little bit to it today. But essentially, one of the reasons there's pushback is because this bill will release violent felons to the tune of thousands. And this is what we've been screaming. They've been lying about the bill, saying that that's not going to happen. But it is. So, I told you that this is not by accident. This just didn't come out of the blue. And I'm going to give you two pieces. The two top funders of criminal justice reform are number one, George Soros, and number two, the Koch brothers. So this is how you know it's bad. People tend to think of the Koch brothers as being the evil right-wing billionaires. And we also think of George Soros as the evil left-wing billionaire. Well, we know that they work together because they have been working together on criminal justice reform for over 5 years. This is how you know they're a progressive. Criminal justice reform at its root is about destroying your local sheriff's department. It is a multi-tiered process. It's going to go through the local level, the state level. They are simultaneously working at the federal level. They're rolling this out in the same way that they rolled out the Common Core legislation, essentially nuking the American public school board, right? Taking all the power out of locally elected officials and placing it in the hands of federal bureaucrats. They're doing the exact same thing with criminal justice reform. The long goal is to basically take your locally elected sheriff, your locally elected, heads of the police departments, and put them under the jurisdiction, not of the people in their own community, but in the federal government. And so every community will have the same laws. They'll have the same type of sentencing. They'll have the same type of, everything will be standard. Say that again with me. Standard. This was the whole point of Common Core, was to make every curriculum for every child standard, meaning exactly the same cookie cutter. That's what they're looking to do with the criminal justice reform in terms of the long game. But, George Soros, this is from the ACLU in 2014. So what are we in right now? We are almost into 2019. Mm-hmm. So 5 years ago. All right, this is to present to you guys the facts about how far out they work on these things. The Open Society Foundation today, that is George Soros's main donation arm, awarded a grant of $50 million. All right, I'm going to say that again. George Soros awarded a grant of $50 million to the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, in support of its nationwide campaign to end mass incarceration. The idea here from the left is that jails are unjust, right? Criminals, the people who occupy prison cells, federal prisoners and even local and state prisons, they are not perpetrators of crime. They are victims of a system that is racist and unjust.
Oh, jeez.
Okay? They're in prison because things aren't equal. They were never given equity. They were never given a shot in this country. This is the mindset of the left. The campaign seeks to reform criminal justice policies that have increased our incarceration rates during a period of declining crime. So do you guys see how that works out, right? Because as a regular citizen, I like it when there's no crime. Right? Because then I can walk out to my car and I don't have to worry about getting mugged, and there aren't gangbang wars in the streets of my town or village, right? Regular Americans, do we like low crime or high crime?
Low.
Right? So during a period of low crime, what we have here is incarceration rates increased, and what happened to crime? It decreased. That's the payoff. That's why you incarcerate people, right? But according to George Soros and the ACLU, that is just a travesty, right? Don't worry about the 300 million American citizens who deserve to be safe and deserve to have law and order. No, let's focus on a small minority of violent felons and criminals because the system is unjust. That's the perspective from the left and George Soros. I'm going to go into this article a little bit more because it lays out the plan. But essentially, the grant money. Well, I'm going to do that tomorrow because that's going to take a little bit too much time. So we're going to go. So here, that was $50 million 5 years ago from George Soros. So is it any wonder that we have organizations all over the United States funded by George Soros who are lobbying in Washington, D.C., who are pushing out white papers and opinion papers on criminal justice reform? It's not because they believe in it, guys. It's because George Soros is paying them to do it. Now, everyone wants to know, well, why would George Soros want to release felons? I don't know. I don't care. You guys don't need to care either. You don't need to care why he's doing it. All we need to know is that the legislation is bad. And the reason we know it's bad is because the more people who read it, the more they begin to freak out. There was a report from ABC today about the inner workings, and apparently in a closed-door session of committee in the Senate, it was incredibly raucous, right? There was a very heated debate. And this goes like, well, big senators are yelling at Mike Lee and other senators and saying, what are you guys doing? Have you even read this bill? And it's likely that they haven't read the bill. The bill is written...
Pulled a Nancy Pelosi.
Right. And so this is this is what led to the very public Twitter battle between Mike Lee and Tom Cotton. And Tom Cotton won because Tom Cotton was right. Why Mike Lee is doing this, we might know sometime in the future. Right now, we don't know. But to me, doesn't matter. That's a brain cell that you guys don't have to waste thinking about. See, the whole point of this program is to clear away all of the brush and the debris and the chaos of politics so that you guys are clear-headed, right? Don't waste your brain energy wondering why people stab you in the back. Just know they stabbed you in the back on this issue, right? There might be an issue that we're going to depend on Mike Lee to help us out in the future. And in that case, then we work together. As long as you align, you work together. But once they fall apart, we have to hold them accountable. But here it is from the Koch end, right? The Kochs have devoted tens of millions of dollars over the past 5 years. This is from the Atlantic in 2015. And the question in this piece that was written years and years ago was, can we really trust the Kochs on criminal justice reform? What are they up to? But here's what the Kochs have done. Here's what they've been up to. And these are the two major funders behind criminal justice. That's what we're going to get to today. And then we're going to continue the discussion tomorrow. Various tentacles of the Koch empire have been involved in criminal justice issues for about a decade. See how they work 10 years out. Progressives always work 10 years out. And they always lie to you about the real mission of their involvement in a particular issue. During that time, Charles Koch has quietly made contributions amounting to 7 figures, that's over $1 million, to the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, money that has been used to provide defense lawyers for poor defendants. And these are some of the organizations that are responsible for making it virtually impossible to convict any of these criminals on assault, battery, rape, or murder. It's why so many federal felons are in the clink over drug trafficking and quote-unquote nonviolent crimes. It's because all of the new sentencing laws that have been put into effect over the past 10 years make it impossible for the feds to lock these people up for the truly violent and heinous crimes they commit. And so the feds go after them on drug charges. Then the liberals come back and say, this guy just got convicted on drug charges and that's nonviolent. And they're saying, no. This guy has a rap sheet a mile long. He's a kingpin with the, Los Zetos or with the LA Kings, or not the LA Kings, that's a basketball team. The LA something. There's some nasty gang group. I'll get to it tomorrow. Well, I'm going to give you guys tomorrow I'm going to give you a case study and the type of violent felon that's going to be released should this bill pass. And I'm also going to give you guys everything you need to do to fight it. Listen, we're at the tip of the sword or the spear on this issue, and we can beat it. The headline out of ABC News was that this bill is in trouble. And people are beginning to get angry with Mitch McConnell because he's now dragging his feet. People are reading the bill. It's turning into a PR nightmare for law and order conservatives and Republicans, and that's a good thing. This is where this audience shines. You guys, you get on the horn, you get on social media, you push this out, and you stop it. But the Coke industries, and we're just talking about the background, the people who are funding, the root funders of criminal justice reform. This just didn't come overnight. They've been planning this for at least 10 years. The Koch brothers and George Soros in tandem. And the Koch brothers Association, they have increased their advocacy. We know that they donated 7 figures to the National Public Defenders Union, but they also have made their advocacy more vocal in recent months. This is from an article in Atlantic, which I'm going to post all of my information here to the shannonjoy.com and under Shannon Show Prep. But from public statements to new partnerships with such groups as, so these are the groups that the Kochs are funding in the name of criminal justice reform. And again, this was about 5 years ago. Families Against Mandatory Minimums, the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. Even the liberal Center for American Progress received money from the Koch brothers. In addition, folks like Van Jones have welcomed the Koch support. This was in he appeared in this was in a panel discussion in Washington, D.C. Van Jones, the communist Van Jones, if you remember, right? He looks nice now, and he's tamed his rhetoric a little bit, but he's a communist. Read his manifesto. Yeah. It's getting late. Jones has welcomed the Koch's support for his new Cut 50 project, which aims to have prison populations over the next decade. So when you don't incarcerate people, what happens? Crime goes up, right? When you incarcerate more people, crime goes down. When you let them go, crime goes up. So why, this is this is in the studies, this is irrefutable.
Common sense.
It's common sense. So why would Charles Koch and the other Koch want to release dangerous felons upon the American people, our innocent babies? I don't know. I don't care. And you shouldn't either. All you need to know is that these guys are doing it. That's all that matters. Jones has welcomed Koch's support for his Cut 50 project. When he sat next to Holden, who is a Koch fellow, he gave him a hug. And they've agreed to participate in upcoming conferences. These are the folks. I'm going to give you a quick list. We're going 2 minutes over, but that's okay. We're gonna wrap up the show in a minute. These are the people who are supporting criminal justice reform. Just a handful: George Soros, the Koch brothers; Kanye West, Kim Kardashian; Jared Kushner, the rabid liberal leftist, advisor to President Trump; Cory Booker, Van Jones, Kirsten Gillibrand, and amazingly, Mike Lee, Rand Paul, and unfortunately Michelle Malkin, who just recently released an op-ed with her case. So, this is one of those things. And this is when it gets hard for conservatives. This is when we get divided. Let's not get divided. Just know, you don't have to worry about why they're doing this. Just know, if you look at the discernible policy outcome, I really encourage you to look at all of the research that Daniel has done. This is who we have in opposition: Daniel Horowitz, Mark Levin, the majority of the editorial staff at Conservative Review, Tom Cotton, Ted Cruz, Jeff Sessions, who wrote a massive 4-page when the House First Step Act was about to pass. Jeff Sessions had his office write a massive indictment. I'm going to have that ready tomorrow so I can read snippets, but they laid out probably the most comprehensive case against this particular bill. That's another great resource that is already up at Shannon's show prep, because we went over that a few weeks ago. I also want to encourage you guys to go into my podcast. So subscribe to theshannonjoy.com, go into the podcast archive and pull up the shows that we've done. We've probably done 4 or 5 or 6 shows on criminal justice reform just in the past month, a couple interviews with Daniel Horowitz. And that will get you guys up to date, because you're hearing a lot of propaganda, an enormous amount of, that's all right, Mike, don't worry about it. Mike just coughed. Where's the cough button, right? We don't have it in our makeshift studio. But Jeff Sessions, his Justice Department, a bunch of national prosecutors unions, also police unions, unions that protect, who are the folks who work in the prisons? I'm like blanking. Correction officers. So there's been a lot of pushback from correction officers, also victims' rights groups that I'll have a more comprehensive list for you tomorrow. But hopefully that's a good primer on criminal justice reform and kind of what's happening here. We're going to continue that tomorrow. We're also going to look at some economic issues. We have a major budget battle coming up, and we'll continue to give you the squirrels. We'll try to focus your attention and your energy on what you can do today. There's no point in having a radio audience. There's no point in anything that we do unless we affect change, right? And right now we have a conservative movement that is impotent. It's impotent because it's being lied to by conservative talkers and big conservative think tanks and conservative organizations. And my mission, and I know that Daniel Horowitz and Steve Deace and a whole host of you out there share this mission with me, is to bust through that firewall so that conservatives can get the truth every day and begin to make their voices heard. With just this audience and the small audience that Daniel Horowitz has at Conservative Review, we are the tip of the spear, and we have a good chance to kill this criminal justice reform bill, which has $50 million behind it, years of planning behind it, and an enormous amount of powerful people in Washington, D.C. pushing it forth. The fact that we can affect change in something like that, this is where our power is. I want to encourage you all, make a phone call to your senator, your congressman, write an email, tweet the president, push out this information as best you can to all your friends and families. Get educated on it yourself, because you guys can be the change. All right, that is the program, you guys. Thank you so very much. This has been an amazing broadcast. I appreciate all of you watching. Remember, support the program. Donate in any amount at the top of the page in the right-hand corner at theshannonjoy.com. Better yet, subscribe to the program, or maybe gift a subscription to someone in your friend or family who you think would enjoy the program. We will see you tomorrow. Courtney, Mike, thank you. I think this one went off without a hitch. Maybe I can release you tomorrow. The makeshift.
I'll watch from afar.
So yeah, Mike will be like on speed dial in case I mess anything up. I should never touch buttons. That's something I should never do. But you guys are amazing. Thank you. Push it out, share it, Twitter, Facebook, subscribe to the YouTube channel, right? Because that helps.
Subscribe.
Because once we get to 400 subscribers, we can monetize it, which is kind of funny. You get like a penny for an ad. They're like, oh, the Snickers ad popped up underneath my YouTube. And I'm like, yes, every penny counts, right?
It's going wonderfully. With the numbers the traffic to the website is up since you left that former station that shall not be named.
Right.
The traffic to the website is up 1,000%.
You're kidding me.
No,
so my engineer and tech guy, Mike Panassa, just told me that the traffic to our website since we were booted from the radio station that shall never be mentioned on this radio program, 9 days ago, the traffic on our website is up 1,000%. So Mike is looking at the numbers. Thank you so much. I mean, you guys are amazing. My cup runneth over. I know I've said that about 1 million times, but that is the best way to describe, the nature. I feel like the show is so much better without the person I used to broadcast with, like popping in and with all of the comments and the questions and the I'm just all done with that. All All right, you guys, thank you again. 108, not so bad. We'll do a longer broadcast tomorrow, but again, no commercial breaks, so that's always nice. You don't have to listen, through spots. But thanks, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.